China's central bank is once again tightening its grip on the country's currency, the yuan, amid one of the most turbulent periods for global markets in recent years. With the Chinese economy facing external pressure from an intensifying trade war with the United States, the People's Bank of China has quietly but firmly stepped in to prevent what it considers the most dangerous outcome, a sharp, uncontrolled decline in the yuan that could shake confidence at home and abroad. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. According to multiple sources with direct knowledge of the situation, Beijing issued fresh instructions to major state-owned banks this week. These banks were told to scale back their purchases of US dollars, particularly for their proprietary trading accounts, and to apply stricter scrutiny when executing dollar orders for their clients. The message from the PBOC was clear: speculative or excessive dollar buying will not be tolerated, and the state stands ready to act against any forces driving volatility. This form of guidance, known as window guidance, in Chinese financial circles, is not a formal policy pronouncement but rather a behind-the-scenes directive. It has long been one of the central bank's most effective tools for shaping financial markets without resorting to overt, market-shaking announcements. By issuing such quiet instructions, the PBOC can signal resolve and shape expectations while preserving some flexibility in how markets respond. On Wednesday, these measures became visible in market activity. Traders reported that large state banks were aggressively selling US dollars and buying yuan in the onshore market, essentially intervening on behalf of the central bank to limit the currency's decline. The moves came after the yuan had lost more than 1.3% of its value in just the first weeks of the month, slipping to 7.35 against the US dollar, a level that, while not unprecedented, raised concerns of further deterioration. Meanwhile, the offshore yuan, which trades more freely and is often seen as a global indicator of sentiment toward China, had dropped to a record low overnight. Yet insiders stress that Beijing does not intend to allow a repeat of the currency turmoil that shook markets in 2015 and 2016, when a surprise yuan devaluation triggered massive capital outflows and sent global markets into a tailspin. 3 policy advisors and 1 senior banker with knowledge of the central bank's thinking told Reuters that the PBOC remains committed to avoiding any drastic, destabilizing moves. A sharp depreciation will not happen because it would damage market confidence and risk destabilizing the broader economy, one policy advisor explained. But modest, carefully managed depreciation can help exporters offset some of the pressure from US tariffs. Beyond currency, the government must also support industries with direct measures, subsidies, tax rebates, and strategies to diversify into new markets beyond the United States. This balancing act reflects the twin imperatives facing Beijing: shielding its massive export sector from the shock of US tariffs while preserving financial stability at home. Washington's latest tariff escalation, championed by President Donald Trump as part of his reciprocal trade campaign, took effect on Wednesday. The measures included punitive duties of up to 104% on Chinese goods, a staggering level that threatens to sharply curtail Chinese exports to one of its largest markets. The timing could hardly be worse for China. Its economy is already grappling with sluggish growth, a faltering property sector, high levels of local government debt, and subdued consumer confidence. Exports, once the engine of China's meteoric rise, have slowed considerably in recent quarters, raising alarms about how much resilience the world's second-largest economy still has. In this context, a runaway decline in the yuan could deal a double blow, not only undermining global faith in China's economic management but also encouraging a damaging wave of capital flight as investors seek safety abroad. The PBOC's recent moves, therefore, appear designed to strike a middle path. By tolerating a modest weakening of the yuan, authorities give exporters some relief, making Chinese goods cheaper and more competitive on international markets despite the tariffs. But by drawing a firm line against sharp depreciation, they hope to reassure domestic and international investors that China remains committed to stability. This strategy became clearer earlier in the week when the PBOC adjusted its official daily, fixing, the midpoint reference rate around which the yuan is allowed to trade in a tight band of 2%. For the first time since 2023, the fixing was set beyond a psychologically important threshold, signaling that Beijing is prepared to allow some measured depreciation. Yet analysts note that the move was tightly controlled and carefully messaged, suggesting that any further weakening will also be kept within bounds. Financial markets reacted quickly to these signals. Following reports of the PBOC's actions, the onshore yuan rebounded by around 50 basis points, trimming its losses for the day. The offshore yuan, too, regained about 120 basis points, underscoring investor belief that the central bank is standing firmly behind the currency. Still, the risks are far from over. Analysts warn that if the trade war continues to escalate, Beijing will face increasingly difficult choices. A weaker yuan can certainly provide some relief to exporters, but it cannot fully offset tariffs of the scale imposed by Washington. Moreover, allowing the yuan to slide too far would invite accusations from the United States that China is engaging in currency manipulation, a label that carries not just political but also financial consequences. Policymakers may prefer to maintain some degree of measured stability, said Christopher Wong, a foreign exchange and rates strategist at OCBC Bank. The objective is to strike a balance, enough flexibility to reflect economic reality, but enough control to prevent panic or speculation. The broader implications go beyond the yuan-dollar exchange rate. At stake is China's reputation as a steward of global financial stability. Since its reform and opening in the late 20th century, China has sought to gradually internationalize the yuan, positioning it as a potential rival to the US dollar in global trade and finance. A chaotic devaluation now would set back that ambition and undermine trust in Beijing's commitment to a stable currency regime. For Beijing's leaders, therefore, the current situation is not just an economic test but a political one. It pits China's long-standing commitment to stability and gradual reform against the unpredictable shocks of a global trade war. It also highlights the delicate balance of managing domestic concerns, protecting jobs, preserving confidence, and supporting industries, while navigating international pressures from Washington and global investors. As the trade conflict deepens, the yuan will remain a key battleground. Every shift in its value will be scrutinized by markets for signs of Beijing's next move. For now, the PBOC's message is unmistakable. It will not allow the yuan to spiral into free fall, even as it concedes that some managed weakening may be unavoidable. Stability, not shock therapy, is the guiding principle. Perfect. Since the last expanded chapter was focused on China's central bank moves to stabilize the yuan amid US tariffs, the logical next chapter should move deeper into the broader economic and geopolitical consequences. This next section can focus on how the yuan battle ties directly into the US-China trade war escalation, and how both countries are weaponizing economics for political leverage. The standoff between Beijing and Washington has now moved beyond trade balances and tariffs. At its heart lies something far more strategic: the currency war, and the battle over who sets the terms of global finance. As the yuan came under increasing pressure in late September, it became evident to global markets that China's currency policy was no longer just an economic tool, it had become a front line in the geopolitical confrontation between the world's two largest economies. For years, tensions between the United States and China have simmered over issues of trade, technology, and influence. But the latest round of tariffs announced by President Donald Trump marks one of the most aggressive measures yet. On Wednesday, the United States imposed sweeping duties on imports from dozens of countries, with China at the very center of the storm. Chinese goods now face tariffs of up to 104%, a level designed not merely to rebalance trade but to send a message: Washington is willing to weaponize its economic dominance to pressure Beijing into concessions. The stakes could not be higher. China's export machine, which has fueled decades of rapid growth and lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty, is now being tested in unprecedented ways. The US remains one of China's largest markets, and tariffs of this magnitude will inevitably reduce the competitiveness of Chinese goods abroad. Factories in Guangdong, Zhejiang, and Jiangsu, regions that have long been the heart of China's manufacturing engine, are already reporting lower orders, thinner profit margins, and increasing uncertainty. Against this backdrop, the value of the yuan takes on extraordinary importance. A weaker yuan makes Chinese exports cheaper, helping offset some of the tariff burden. But it also carries immense risks. Too much depreciation, too quickly, could unleash capital flight as investors scramble to protect their wealth, weaken household purchasing power, and tarnish China's global image as a stable economic power. This is why the PBOC has stepped in so aggressively. By instructing banks to curb dollar buying and intervene in the market, it is signaling not only to traders but also to foreign governments that China will not allow its currency to become a casualty, or a weapon, of the trade war. The message is twofold. China is strong enough to defend the yuan, but also flexible enough to let it adjust gradually to new